Well, I always tell my patients, we need to be thinking like a decade ahead of our biology, and that goes even before the 40s, you know? So thinking ahead in that term, menopause. Okay, menopause starts typically around 50 or so for women. I look at that decade before as like you're trying to build up reserve. Women are trying to build up reserve. And I tell them, menopause can be like a 10 out of 10 in severity or a 2 out of 10, depending on what you go in, what are you bringing with you to that phase of your life.
Yeah.
So it's really like we're training. And same thing with men, like men's hormones start to go down as well, although it's slower than women. It's not as abrupt as in menopause, but men go through something called andropause, and testosterone starts to decline probably about 1% or so a year after age 40. So, building up a lot of reserve to me is not, of course, the diet, nutrition is a huge part of it, but, our sleep, how we manage stress, our leisure time, our diet, supplements, every box needs to be checked
Okay.
to build up that tank of reserve. The biggest, if I had to think of one common problem that I see amongst patients in that age group, it's alcohol. I mean, I think people really underestimate the effects that even small but cumulative amounts of alcohol have on their metabolism, their weight. It just creeps up, and we've all seen it. And I think it's a big issue out there.
Well, it's interesting because that's kind of the number one reason why I quit drinking in my early 30s. And I really stopped at 30, 31, just because I didn't like how it caused me to gain a lot of weight. And so I constantly felt like I was on this roller coaster where I'd be super social, I'd have a few drinks, and then I would have to stop drinking for a few weeks just so I could, fit back into my clothes.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like the feeling and I didn't like the lifestyle and I wanted consistency. So I stopped drinking before it was a fad and I would just show up at dinners and bars and restaurants, and I would just order water. And I'm grateful that I did that. Hopefully, it's going to make moving to the next decade of my life a little more smooth. But there are still a lot of people that are really married to having a drink as a way to release stress or to create inner peace or time for themselves. When you have clients that are still married to having drinks every day, are there activities or tools that you're able to share with them to make that lifestyle edit?
Well, first of all, one thing I tell them is, look, if we try this for a period of time, say, a few months, enough time that we'll see some changes in their quality of life. I'm like, if you try it and you're feeling worse or not, you can always go back. You can always
Yeah.
go back to drinking if you think that's good for you and you feel better. And most people don't want to. But it's hard with if it depends why they're drinking. Like if it's stress, like of course go out and exercise or take some ashwagandha, meditate. There's 1,000 things you can do to manage stress.
Yeah.
I can have stressful days here at work and I don't open a bottle of alcohol. So there's certainly better ways to manage stress. If it's a social thing, like you're describing, a lot of my patients say, "Oh, but I go to dinner and I go out." But you can have a bubbly water and a lime or something else to
Hmm.
kind of give you that tactile sensation. If somebody's embarrassed that they feel peer pressure, and which I see in adults, in their
Yeah.
50s who will acknowledge that to me, well, that's something deeper that they need to work on. But I guess, you want to find out why a lot of people think that what they're drinking is healthy or it's, low calorie or it's not, and I explain again, always go back to the science. I like to educate. It's the best way to empower my patients, right? So I'll say, well, it's not just about the calories. Here's what alcohol does to your pancreas and it affects your insulin and your blood sugar metabolism. Here's what it does to your brain. Here's what it does to your heart. And, just try to paint a bigger picture. Alcohol is associated with osteoporosis. And I've seen young men literally with spines of like an 80-year-old patient from osteoporosis because of alcoholism. So I try to just educate, and usually that's the best way to help somebody make a change. And tell them also, look, I'm not telling you don't ever drink again. You can enjoy it. It's just like I don't want people to not eat dessert or whatever. You just don't want it to be kind of maladaptive to the point where it's causing you to have to be in my office.